Agriculture in South Africa is a key to our economic success, and yet the sector is continually mired in controversy. I guess if we don't get this right, the consequence is stark. We simply don't feed ourselves. We'll have to import more. So it's no surprise that efficient, sustainable and profitable technological solutions for agriculture top the agenda at this year's big Africa Agri-Tech Conference. It takes place next week. Chris Burgess is the editor of Landbou Weekblad. It's an icon on the bookshelves of South Africa, and he joins us from Cape Town. Chris, a very good morning to you. I guess the question firstly is not how the industry has changed, but whether the agri-industry is changing fast enough.
Good morning, Jeremy. Yes, well, I mean, the interesting thing about South African agriculture is that, over the past decade or so, the biggest change obviously has been the farmers have been getting fewer and they've been getting bigger. And it's just been phenomenal to see the almost the professionalization of agriculture in South Africa. If one looks at the South African economy as a whole, and you look at what world-class industries we still have left, we've just heard the news about Anglo-American this week in the mining industry. Agriculture has can compete with the best in the world. If you look at our export industries, we're right up there. We're competitive, globally competitive. So I mean, in many respects, agriculture is from a production perspective and from a technological perspective, it's an amazing story. I mean, it's one of the sectors. In my opinion, it's one of the last few sectors in our economy that really is world class and internationally competitive.
One of the arguments is that big agri is getting bigger, that it's forcing out smaller farmers, and the industry itself has become too concentrated.
Well, yes. I mean, that unfortunately is a reality all over the world. Agriculture, South African agriculture specifically, is one of the least protected agricultural industries in the world. I think with New Zealand, we get the least support from our state. And that you see all over the world. I mean, you see it in the US too. I mean, you travel through the countryside in the US and you see entire small towns that have just basically been abandoned as big corporate farms, agribusinesses move in and take over family farms. Unfortunately, that has also been the case in South Africa. I mean, the entire farming communities where I grew up in, where farmer numbers have more than halved. Entire big farming families that just aren't there anymore. That is basically the agricultural model that we have inherited from the US. But having said that, there are very interesting developments in the space of regenerative farming, where there is almost a recalibration technologically, looking at agriculture not purely from a chemical perspective, but trying to get natural systems to operate functionally, and that seems to be a backdoor for the family farm, for the family farmer, and a way for smaller farmers to stay competitive. And that's one of the topics that we'll be looking at the conference is how can family farms and smaller operators use technology to remain competitive in an era where bigger is better.
It's a given, Chris Burgess, that the farming sector has to embrace technology, but I wonder sometimes whether this is done with a great deal of enthusiasm, or are people being dragged into this simply because they have no choice?
Well, I can say without any doubt, South African farmers are, and it's been proven, we are some of the earliest adopters of technology in the world. And I think that is exactly because the margins are so thin in farming in South Africa. All the big ag machinery companies like John Deere, I mean, they know that there's absolutely no point in launching a product in America and not having it immediately available in South Africa. South African farmers have no choice but to adopt technology as it comes out, and I mean it's quite phenomenal to see how technologically advanced South African agriculture actually is. You know, we've got companies like Irrigation, which is a absolute world leader in precision farming. That is based in Wellington. I mean, they are working with some of the biggest operators in the US citrus industry, with US irrigation companies. So South African farmers are, and I mean it's no exaggeration, are absolute world leaders when it comes to the adoption of technology and the development of technology. I mean, in the old days we were always looking, for instance, in our wheat industry, we were looking at Western Australia as the gold standard in terms of technology. Well, I mean, today we've got Equalizer, which builds planters out here in Cape Town, exporting planters to Australia, and I mean our technology is being exported in the opposite direction. So. I mean, actually, a very good story to be told about South African agriculture and the incubation of technology that agriculture facilitates.
Chris, let's take us away from the theoretical to the practical, if we can, and maybe give us a sense of some of the technological shifts that you've seen. I was fascinated a year or so ago. I was shown one of these big John Deere combine harvesters. I mean, it was the size of an Airbus A380. And I was told that, you know, often this is controlled by satellites, which blew me away completely. Where else are you seeing these technological shifts, and how are they making farming easier?
Well, I think precision farming. I mean, I think that is the main thrust. So when you're talking about satellites, you get guidance systems in these. I mean, not only the combine harvesters but also in the planters, where the combine harvester. It follows exactly its path up and down the land, so there's absolutely no wastage. Planters plant exactly on the same route, so that you get no skips when planting. You have in your perennial crops like nuts, you have precision irrigation, the application of fertilizers in a precision way through drippers. You have drones that are being deployed to scout for disease and for insects in orchards. You've got precision farming with in livestock. I mean, we've got now feed conversion, for instance, is the big revolution in livestock, where you actually genetically select animals for their capacity to turn feed into meat, and then of course, you know, biotech and genetics. I mean, genetics is and genomics. I mean, that is the next big frontier, not only in animals but in plants. And then, of course, you've got automation. John Deere has just launched their first concept automated tractor, which will be controlled by a farmer from his office. There's also the electrification, where implements actually generate their own electricity to fuel whatever function they have to do, and then you've got data analysis and machine learning. You know, if you look at a company like Irrigation, for instance, I mean, they synthesize all the data that's coming from a farm, from the moisture probes to the irrigation, all synthesized in a single platform that the farmer can have a look at, and can start making really informed management decisions. So all the fourth industrial revolution theory that we hear that we hear about, that we're all waiting to see unfold in other industries, is actually happening in agriculture as we speak, and is really, I mean, the revolution is really well and truly underway in agriculture.
Chris Burgess, just very quickly, I want to reference the conference which is coming up in Pretoria. But as I speak to you this morning, we're also reporting that South Africa is now experiencing stage 3 load shedding. You've just spoken about the generation of electricity by the community itself. I'm just wondering to what extent load shedding is affecting the sector right now.
Well, I mean, in terms of irrigation, it's been an extreme challenge. I mean, you know, if you're irrigating maize, a maize plant needs a certain amount of water, and it needs a certain amount of water at a certain physiological development stage. If you can't apply that water, you're going to see it in your yields. So it's been a severe challenge. And the irony, of course, is that agriculture, of all the industries, is the best poised to actually be generating alternative energy for the grid, and farmers have been chomping at the bit to get involved in this, because they are generating. A lot of these big farms are already generating their own solar and wind energy, but for agriculture to be able to sell back into the grid, we all know what the complications are there. I heard somewhere that if agriculture could be allowed to supply the grid with energy, we could the sector could make an absolutely significant impact in our electricity shortage. So I think in terms of the impact, it has been severe. Farmers have been making plans, but the good news is that if agriculture gets the green light, we could make a significant impact in the generation of alternative energy.
All right, Chris Burgess, we are going to leave it there, and obviously that and very other important issues at the Africa Agri-Tech Conference will be discussed, organised by Landbou Weekblad, and it takes place in Pretoria next week. Chris, thank you very much indeed.